Today I have for you a very wintry and sparkly Christmas card, and it's got a blue and silver theme, and there's lots of different things on here that's giving it the shine. We've got the silver color me paper, the jewel, there's white jewel dazzles, and there's also silver border dazzles. The blue paper also is a bit shimmery. It's a glimmer paper. And the silver linen paper in this little frame here. So lots of bling. Here's the inside. So if you want to know how to make this, stay tuned. So today I will be using the Christmas Cheer stamp set. 2 sheets of dazzles. This is the silver border dazzles, and this is the white jewel dazzles. This beautiful blue glimmer paper, and I think the name of this is lapis lazuli. It's just a fancy name for this color of blue. And then we have the silver swirls color me paper, and this is the silver linen specialty paper, and this is a 12 by 12 sheet, so there's plenty to go around, and this is a really cool finish, and it's a nice heavy cardstock. The first thing I'm going to do is emboss my greeting on the glimmer paper. I'm going to use this stamp right here, Love is the Light of Christmas, so I've gone ahead and placed it on my acrylic block. I'm using Versamark watermark stamp pad. It says watermark stamp pad, but it is useful for all sorts of things, including embossing, because it is a slow drying ink, and the ink is clear. So let me just ink up this stamp really quick. So I'm going to stamp it kind of with a lot of area around, because I'm going to cut this into a certain shape. I want there to be enough room. So just pressing down gently, make sure everything has touched the paper. I think that worked, and if not, I can always do it over. I have the detail white embossing powder, so this is a really fine powder, so it should get all the different details in my image. Go ahead and do a generous shake on there, and then I have this on a scrap piece of paper so that I can save my embossing powder. Looks pretty good to me. There's some areas on here that have unwanted dust. You can use a dry small brush and just brush it off. Or if you have the perfect printing pouch, you can rub that on before you stamp, and it usually makes it so all of these unwanted particles release from the paper really easily. Okay, now for the embossing. Alright, it's looking great. Nice and slick. Okay, so now that I've got that embossed, I'm going to use this set, which is the Design Toolkit number 3. And this is not an item in the bundle, but you can purchase it separately on paperwishes.com. So I'm going to, and you can also detach these, but this one's pretty easy to use, still attached. So I'm going to place this shape over my greeting here. I'm going to go like this. And just trace that with a pencil and cut it out. Now that I cut this out, I've applied some glue stick to the back, and I have a 2.5 inch square of the silver linen paper here. So what I'm going to do is just glue this to the very center of this square, and it should fit just about perfectly in the middle. And that's going to be my greeting for the card. So at this point, I'm going to set this aside. Now I'm going to take this silver swirls color me paper and cover the front of my card with it. Now this is a 5 inch by 5 inch square card. Just putting some glue stick on here. And take my paper. And actually it's easier for me to turn the paper face down and the card, just line it up in the corner. Ignore these lines on the back. And then you just take your ruler and a craft knife and simply slice off the excess. Alright, so next I'm going to take my greeting and I'm actually going to mat it onto the blue glimmer paper right about there. So just straight cuts along the edges. Alright, so I finished matting this piece. I'm going to set it over here for now. And I've got 2 strips of paper that are each 3/4 inch wide by a little longer than 5 inches long. So I'm going to glue these right here, right in the center. And as you can see, it sort of creates what looks like a present, or the top of it if you had the 2 ribbons crossing. So the greeting is going to go right in the center there. Okay, so now that I have glued down these strips, and I've actually foam taped this in the center, so it gives it a little bit of dimension there. Next I'm going to decorate with the jewel dazzles and the dazzle borders. So I'll go ahead and do that. Alright, so now I'm done with the front, and I've just simply added the jewel dazzles to these 4 points. And for this little effect, I've stacked a medium jewel dazzle on top of, or a small jewel dazzle on top of a medium jewel dazzle. So you've got that little silver circle there. And then for these borders, I've added the thick kind of diamond border in the center. And I've just trimmed as much as I needed, so you don't need to go all the way under the greeting here. So, you know, an inch and a half or inch and a quarter on each side is sufficient, so you don't waste your dazzles, and you get a ton more, so you could make a ton more cards. And the last thing I'm going to do to the front is ink the edges, and I'm going to use this fluid chalk ink pad in blue iris, so it's a nice pretty navy blue color. I got a cosmetic wedge and just simply dab my wedge onto the ink pad and then kind of sweep it along the edges here. So here you can see that I've inked all the edges here with that nice pretty blue color, so it gives a nice little blue glow around the edges. And now I am done with my card front. Now for the inside, what I've done here is made a pretty border along the top, and that's just using about 1 1/4 inch border of the glimmer paper. And then for this little dot border, I used the white jewel dazzles, so I've done the medium jewel dazzle and then the small on top of the medium, and then in between each of these medium ones I have a little one. And then I also have a thin strip of the silver linen paper. This silver border is from the jewel dazzles, the border dazzles, and there's a little jewel dazzle on top of each of those scallop points. And then I have here the same thing I did on the front, which was embossing it with a white embossing powder. Then I matted it on the silver linen paper, and to make these chains I used the scallop borders here, and I just made them touch each other here so it looks kind of like a chain link. And then finally I inked the edges of the card just to mimic the front a little bit. So that's the inside of the card, and that's the front. Stay tuned for the bundle deal, and I'll see you again next week. Thanks for watching. First in the bundle we have the Christmas Cheer stamp set, and it has 13 stamps, and they're a pretty good size. This one's probably about 3.5 to 4 inches wide, or tall I should say. But they all have really beautiful intricate greeting designs. And there's also some separate swirls and a snowflake here, so you can customize your greetings. Also in the bundle, 2 sets of dazzles. This is the dazzle jewels, or the jewel dazzles in white, and the border dazzles in the silver glitter finish. Really nice and sparkly. And of course with the jewel dazzles you get 540 stickers per sheet, so that's a great value. The lapis lazuli blue glimmer paper. This is 8.5 by 11. The Color Me papers, the silver swirls, really pretty. And that's 12 by 12, of course. And then another 12 by 12 specialty paper called silver linen. And look how cool that looks in the light. So those are all the things you're getting in this week's savings bundle. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again next week.